Welcome everybody to this joint Ndevr board webinar this morning. We are focusing on integrated business planning for JD Edwards with a specific focus on supply chain and specifically the sales and operations process, or S&OP. So just to go through the agenda this morning, well, first of all, we'll introduce the people that will be presenting, both from Ndevr and from board. Then we'll move on and talk about the whole supply chain planning process, specifically the S&OP process and how the board product enables the S&OP process. The whole objective of S&OP is to optimize your supply chain. Chris will also talk a bit about board, their platform and their track record with customers. Following this, we'll have a short demo of the product, followed by the usual Q&A at the end, if that's okay. All right, well, just as a way of introduction, my name's Tom Devine. I'm with Ndevr. I have a long background in manufacturing and supply chain. I spent many years in different industries, including the automotive industry, steel industry, plumbing supplies, automated billing and fulfillment industry. So I had a lot of experience in this both manufacturing and supply chain. I moved to IT at a time when IT was looking for people who knew about industry, could talk about industry. It's probably the main reason I moved over. But I'd also like to now pass over to Chris and Nigel just to introduce themselves from board.
Thank you, Tom. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Wilkins. As you can see, I work at board and I've been in the planning space arena for well over 15 years with vendors, and I'm heading up the supply chain go-to-market here at board. And I've probably got about 10 years experience in the supply chain space on top of planning. Nigel.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Nigel Ephraim's. I'm a solution architect here at board. I've been working with planning solutions for over 20 years, both as a consultant implementing these solutions, but also on the client side or the customer side where I manage these types of solutions. So I'll be showing you the board solution today and look forward to doing that shortly.
Thanks, Nigel. So just introducing Ndevr and board together as the companies. Some of you would know Ndevr perhaps already. Ndevr has been in business for 25 years, being an Oracle partner and also servicing the JD Edwards community in Australia and New Zealand. Our strategy is to bring on partners who have products that complement JD Edwards, that enhance the JD Edwards product to get better return for investment. So one of those specialized partners is board, and we partner with board because of their advanced planning capabilities and their platform to enable that, both in the finance and supply chain areas. So we welcome board as a partner, and we look forward to sharing their capabilities with you as well. So let's just talk about supply chain and specifically sales and operations planning. I guess the eternal question that always comes up, that's been around since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, is how do factories, supply chains work with the sales and marketing departments to deliver what customers require? How do they align their plans? How can that work? So the sales and operations planning process is designed to answer that question. So we have sales and operations planning. The idea is to keep everybody, if you like, on the same page with the planning information. And what I found in my experience is, and I've implemented sales and operations planning systems twice, is that once you do get your system running well, the information it produces for both sides of the organization becomes invaluable. Actually, I found it actually became strategic and became a competitive advantage competitive advantage for the companies I've worked with. Being able to say you can do something when a customer wants it, how he wants it, when he wants it, the price he wants it, etc., is invaluable. And I found that we were able to do that. The sales and operations planning information virtually became the Bible for the company each month, became invaluable. So certainly it's worth the, I would definitely say it's worth the effort. So just moving on to sales and operations planning, and I guess how to, or how do you go about getting sales and operations systems running? It's a matter of looking at your particular businesses, your industries, your supply chains, etc. You need to look at perhaps setting products up so you can plan at an aggregate level. So, things we call product families. You link them to critical resource areas, whatever they might be. So you're planning here at an aggregate level, but you're looking at putting a lot of data at an aggregate level through these product families to evaluate the constraints in the marketplace. So that process of doing that, in my experience, like I said, I'd implemented it twice. Trying to do that practically, I used to have 3 or 4 people working each month with spreadsheets, extracting information from forecasting systems, extracting information from purchasing supply areas, trying to bring it all together into one area so that it could be used. And we used to do it. It was cumbersome. It took a long time, probably open to a bit of error. So what we're introducing today is the board solution, which simplifies that whole process, cuts a lot of that out. And you'll find that when you see the demo, the sort of capability in this product, and I've looked over the years at many products proposing to be able to support an S&OP process, and by far when I saw the board product, it did eclipse that. So it's a matter of then coming up with a plan which both sides can work to. And the resource planning can be anything. Like I say, it could be manufacturing. It could be obviously equipment, machinery in the factory. It can be long lead supply items coming from China or wherever. It can be even, in my experience, we had to plan around engineering design was a scarce resource, and so we had to plan around that. So the S&OP process, supported by a board, extremely powerful. And the other thing it enables you to do, which is critical, and again leads to competitive advantage, has been able to react to disruption in the way of, okay, customer wants to double an order. Can we do it? How can we do it? We've got a new product coming up. How can we introduce that into our current system? How can it be managed? So different things like this, or the ship sunk on the way here from China. What are we going to do about it? So all those different disruptions, changes to the plan can be evaluated and reviewed quite quickly and timely with the S&OP process. And you're making informed decisions based on having a system that can quickly evaluate what the situation is and what steps you need to take. So I hope I've introduced the S&OP process. Some of you would know of it, some of you would have lived with it perhaps before and experienced. Those of you who haven't, I would certainly recommend an evaluation of the process and the board capability in supporting this process. I'm going to hand over to Chris now to talk a little bit more about the board product, the platform, and some of the success they've had with various customers in this area. Chris?
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
So, yes, very excited to partner with Ndevr, primarily because of their deep supply chain experience and a lot of very similar customers that we have globally. And for those that haven't heard of Board, we're an oldish company, been around quite a few years. We've got quite a large partner ecosystem, thousands of customers globally in offices, etc. Can you move to the next slide, please, Tom? Global footprint, so we have an office in Australia, Japan, Hong Kong, etc. I mean, this is really more to give you the idea that we are a global and long-standing software company in the supply chain and planning space. Next slide, please, Tom. And Board is a supply chain planning platform. And I'll talk a little bit about the platform as we go through, but we are really helping customers to drive out uncertainty into their supply chain, understand volatility and complexity, all on a single integrated platform, which we would suggest is really quite important, rather than siloed based spreadsheets, etc. Next slide, Tom. We give a lot of customers, a lot of our 3,000 odd customers out there, and Tom's mentioned in the past things like new product introduction, demand planning, inventory planning, manufacturing planning in a retail space, merchandise planning, etc. Once again, all on a single platform, so you're not stuck just being able to do demand planning or just demand forecasting or just merchandise planning, etc. Next slide, please, Tom. And there's been really quite a large uptake over the last few years in the work we're doing with customers around supply chain and S&OP planning. And a lot of that, to be brutally honest, is either getting a customer off of the 1,000 spreadsheets that they might be doing demand planning or new inventory or inventory planning, etc., and new product management, or taking them off very siloed systems that are in that only does one thing, or sometimes taking them out of the large ERPs like SAP and that's really it's quite a heavy platform to do this on. So that's certainly the space we're in. Next slide, please, Tom. I've mentioned thousands of customers globally. You know, this is really to give you an idea that we're not new to the business, and we've done this many, many times in the past. Next slide, please, Tom. Next slide, please, Tom. I'm actually after our references. Next one. So I'll just talk about 3 of our customers to give you a bit of an idea from that we really do work with some very large customers at the top end of town, like Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola Europe uses us to do a vast majority of their S&OP planning. Great reference. Next slide, please, Tom. Another great reference, which is an Oracle JDE customer as well. I hope everyone has heard of San Miguel, maybe drunk their beer in the past, but they run their entire S&OP process on board end to end and have so for the last 10 years. Very, very referenceable customer. And the last one I'll give you, if you can go to the next slide, please, Tom, is a company called Land Western. They are quite a large global customer, but we've worked with them at the local level. They've got a lot of volatility in their product, as you can imagine, doing potatoes. They've got a very short shelf life, and we've really helped them manage the potato storage and actually taking a lot of money out of wasted products down the track and enable them to do demand forecast and demand planning and very rapidly. We've got them up and running, and they're a great reference site for us here in Australia. So I hope I've given you a bit of a very quick overview of Board and where we fit into the supply chain space. And now over to Nigel to give you a little bit of a deep dive and dig under the covers.
I've logged into Board and I've accessed Board via a Chrome browser. And so any modern browser will work. If you've got Safari with Mac users out there, that won't be an issue. All maintenance and end user access is done through the browser, so there is no installation required in order to manage or use the solution. I'm just going to switch to full screen mode. The Board solution is hosted on Microsoft Azure, so You can choose where you want your data to be hosted. In Australia, there's a number of different locations, but obviously Microsoft has hosting locations all over the world. And the focus of the demonstration, as we all know, is on S&OP. So we're going to focus mainly on a demand example today. But one key thing to remember about this solution is that it is a platform. Chris talked about the board platform. And if you think about something similar and you look at Apple and their iOS platform where you can build applications to pretty much do anything you want, we are using a very similar concept. So everything you're going to see in this demonstration today is purely a mock-up. It's not a what you see is what you get in this demo today. It's purely here to kind of paint a bit of an art of the possible or a vision for where you can take this solution. Let's scroll down. These are a number of different areas in which we see board customers building solutions on this platform. So if we take a look at the time granularity that our customers are building solutions in, they're typically focusing on the strategic and the tactical levels. And in those areas, we're looking at, for example, in the strategic, a long-term multi-year plan. So, plans going out 5, 10, 15 years. If we go down to the tactical level, we're looking more at that annual to 18-month, monthly level of planning. And then in some areas, we do have operational planning, and that's where we go down to the month or weekly plan. But at that lowest level, being execution, there are purpose-built solutions out there for that type of thing, and we don't play in that space. If we look at the level of granularity when it comes to planning, at the strategic level, we're looking at strategic initiatives around investments and assets that a company might buy in order to reach those strategic goals. And then when we get to the tactical level, we're looking at more product families, channels, regions, business units. That's pretty much where we're going to be looking at in this demonstration today. And if we get to the operational level, then we're going down to the factory and the production line. Now, mousing over the board symbol, all of those white highlighted areas are where we have customers with solutions today. So if you look across the verticals around demand, supply, and finance, you'll see a couple of those different areas. So in terms of demand planning, there's long-term demand planning and demand planning. If we jump over to the far right, being finance, we are doing more financial planning at that operational level. And the key thing again, and Tom talked about this, is you've got one platform on which you can build all of these different solutions. So we don't put limitations on the number of different use cases you can build with board on this platform. So you might choose to focus on, for example, your demand plan first, and then look at financial planning and how the demand plan can integrate with the finance plan all on this one solution. So if we scroll back up, I'm going to start off with an example dashboard or visualization that shows us the different, areas that have been built around demand, distribution, production, and procurement. So let's tab across to that. And this could be an example of a dashboard that could be created for let's call it a consensus meeting between each of the heads of these departments, where they're able to sit in a meeting room across a couple of hours or half a day and go through each of these different plans. That could be on a monthly or a quarterly basis or weekly basis, depending on what the organization's process is. And each of the heads could then step through their plans and present those through the tool. So back to Chris's point around this being a one-stop shop or an all-in-one, you're able to visualize data in the tool to help gain insights and use those insights to then inform your planning process. Right, so you don't have to bring up a separate planning tool and then log into a BI tool, although we do have the integration with tools like Power BI. So a lot of our customers will say, we still prefer to do all of our visualization in that tool. That's fine. Board can be a data source to Power BI. Now, if we look at what each of these areas is doing, we've got the customer demand plan. And I've got what's called a tooltip that pops up there when I mouse over that word. And it says there that this is the unconstrained customer demand, unfettered by subsequent supply constraints. Right, so this is if we could sell everything that we make based on customer demand, what would that plan look like? If we jump over to the distribution network plan, how will the product be distributed from the production plan based on customer demand? The production plan is where we're then looking at things like the demand and distribution plans, and then what is the capacity of our factories to produce the goods that are required to meet those plans? Are there constraints around workforce, around materials availability? We're able to plan for all of those things within that plan. And then finally, we've got the procurement plan, which is driven by the production plan. So if we need a certain amount of raw materials, how much do they cost? And then what is the integration of that with the financial plan? Now, Tom mentioned these examples, but in the customer demand plan, what does the demand plan look like if you're going to phase in a new product? Or in the distribution network plan, what happens if we have a SIP that's sunk on the way here from China? What is that going to do? And how are we going to divert or find alternate ways to get our product to our customers? So as I said, this could potentially be a 2-hour demonstration if we were to go through all of these areas, but just to give you a taste of what's possible, let's take a look at the customer demand plan and just focus on that area today. So I'm going to click on the demand area, and we're going to now deep dive into how a demand planning process could look. And again, remember, this is not a what you see is what you get. This is purely a demonstration in order to inspire design, or potentially for you to understand how your process and how your business could fit into this application or into this solution. So let's start off with the actual demand. We'll move into the planning demand, and then we'll look at some of the reporting capabilities as well of the tool before we wrap up. So if we go into actual demand, the first step is to integrate with source systems. So I know many of you out there are probably JD Edwards customers. We do have connectivity from board to JD Edwards, but we can also connect to pretty much any other system out there. We just need to understand what data is in there, how to get it out into board for your planning requirements. And of course, the Ndevr team can assist with that. So once we have brought our data in, we can then use this tool to gain insights from history or actual data. So what's happened in the past. We can visualize, we can enable board's drill down capabilities. So for example, if you wanted to understand what makes up the actual customer demand for distribution, we can double click on distribution, and then we could drill down into, say, product family, right? And from there, we can double click, and then we can drill down into channel or into store customer, into whatever level of detail we want to underneath the underlying application. We also have the ability to export data to Excel. We can export it in a format that can then be used by the Excel add-in to do further analysis, or we can simply export it as a report that you can then send on to other people in your organization. Or we can create PDFs. So I'm going to come out of here, move on to the next screen, and I'm not going to spend too long on this, but this is really just to show you that you can create these types of dashboards in the tool that allow interactivity for users, and we can visualize data in many different ways, very much in the same way that a Power BI or a Tableau out there could do it. But the key here is to understand that keeping it in within the tool allows you to gain insights and then use it to feed into your planning process. So now that we've got our actual information in, let's take a look at the forecasting example. So again, remember, we're in the demand forecast. What we're looking at on the screen here are a number of different filters down the left-hand side. So in board, we have the concept of scenarios and versions. So an example of a scenario might be an S&OP forecast, and it could be called demand scenario 1. And again, back to Tom's slide, he talked about scenario modeling. So we have the ability to copy data from one scenario into another and then play around with those numbers. Right? So one scenario might be phasing out a product or phasing in a new product. We also have a planning horizon. So there's no limitation on how far out you plan. It's all tied back to what your process is for planning. And we also have versions. So for each demand scenario, you might have a number of versions where you might run through a first pass, a second pass, a final until you lock that version in. Down the bottom here, we have a data model that's been set up for this particular example. So we've got products, customers, and channels. In your organization, you may plan slightly differently, or you may call these things something else. And what's key here to understand is that with the Ndevr team, they're able to help you create a data model in this application that suits exactly your planning processes. You can click on, for example, product family and select one of these filters here, and that's going to then be applied to everything that you see in this screen. If I scroll across, we start to see some yellow cells. The yellow cells is where we can input data to. So let's just filter on our planning months rather than our actuals months. So actuals we can't change, obviously, because they've been loaded in from JD Edwards or a source system or a data warehouse. So if we focus just on plan, we can see from July out to December 22, we go all the way there, we're able to see our plan numbers. It's now up to us to, for example, in demand scenario 1, make adjustments. Now, board has this concept of top-down and bottom-up planning. Obviously, top-down planning is quite key when it comes to demand planning, because you don't want to be going down to every individual SKU and making adjustments, although you can if you want to. But I can, for example, change a number in the retail channel. So I could say I'm going to increase my volume by 3%. So I can type in a 3, and then that calculates the adjustment for me. Or I can click on that cell and say, actually, I'm going to reverse calculate my percentage, and I'm going to type in a value of 40K. Or 400K. If I click on save there, that then back calculates the value of 89.2%. Another thing I can do is I can say I want a flat line of value of 2%, or say 5%. So if I type a greater than symbol and a 5, that's going to put 5% in every one of these cells. Now, when I click on save, that adjustment is actually going to work in a top-down manner. So if you look across product family, you'll see all of those numbers automatically adjust, and it also calculated back up to the adjusted plan there in July. So board allows you to do a top-down where it will cascade the numbers based on the existing data. You can change the way that that does it. So you could say you want to cascade it based on prior year actuals, on the latest forecast. That's all up to you in terms of how the system is configured. If I click on quick layout, this is a way where you can set things up so an end user, if they don't like planning in a certain view, right? So this is the default view where we've got each of our channels, web, retail, distribution, and direct, and then we've got product families under there. But if I, for example, don't like to plan that way, and I prefer to see a different view, we can actually come in and use the pivot table functionality in the tool to change that around. So I could say, rather than by channel, I want to plan by region and product family. So I can there now see each of my regions and then the product families. And I can come in here and click on my view, And each time I log back in, that is going to show me the view that I like to plan by. So board is essentially one big giant pivot table. There's a database or an in-memory database that sits behind this that's enabling all of this. But as we're making any of those changes at those top levels, it is cascading down. From here, I can also clear out the scenario completely. Well, that could have been my starting point, actually. I can bring in data from an advanced planning system if you have one. Board also has its own inbuilt predictive capability. So we have here Beam competition, Beam seasonal. These are predictive algorithms that are pre-built in Board that can be easily set up by business users. So you don't have to be a data scientist. We do, however, have integration with data science tools such as R machine learning or the Azure machine learning platform. So if you do want to get to that more sophisticated level of predictive forecasting, we can. Now over to the right, we have volume, we have revenue and net margin. If we make any changes to our numbers, we can then come in here and then say, calculate financials. And there is a full calculation engine that sits behind Board. The key thing to know about that calculation engine is it uses Excel syntax. So if you're a business user and you want to make changes to how those calculations work, then if you know Excel, you'll be able to manage this tool. We're not going to get into that today. More than happy to do more deep dive sessions for anybody that would like to see a follow-up of that in the future. So at this point now, we have adjusted our volumes and recalculated revenue and net margin. We might now want to phase out or phase in a product. So in this screen here, we see a from date of the 21st of August, 2021, where we want to phase out a 4 colors premium product. If I double click on phase out, there is a business rule that's attached to this, and it asks me the question, do you want to phase this out for a particular country or for all countries? So I'm going to select no to phase out for all countries. And then it asks me about channels. Do you want to do it for a specific channel or for all channels? I'm just going to say all channels. And then there's finally a prompt that says, do you want to continue with this? If I click yes, it's now running a business rule where it is doing that phasing out from August onwards. So the 21st of August, that's why we now see that it has been zeroed out. It's also updated our phased out volumes across each of the channels, and we can also see the impact on our financials. Same thing when it comes to the phasing in, although there's a little bit more sophistication here around how we phase in a product. Again, all of these business rules can be configured by you based on your requirements. So we could say we want to phase in a new product. So if I come in here and then click on new member, I'm just going to type in a new member called 1011. I'll call this the Ndevr webinar product. And we want to link this to the colors product subfamily. And we're going to give it a status of new so that when we run our reports, we can do our filtering on new versus existing products. If I click on submit, I can now input the new product volumes, values, and a phase in date. So I might put in here a volume of 10 million at a price of $3, cost of goods sold at 1, and the phase in date to be, let's say, the 1st of August 2021. So let's click save there. There we have a new product that has been added. And in that type of functionality can be granted by role because you may not want everybody out there in your business adding in new products. And from here, I can then double click on my phase in. And it's going to give me the option to use a manual spread. So that manual spread could be this spread here, or it could be spread based on a similar product or a similar product family. I'm just going to say phase in using the manual spread and click OK. And that's now running a business rule that then does that phasing for me from August onwards. And it also impacts my financials. Now, given the time today, I'm going to move through these next screens fairly quickly, but this screen here shows the ability to apply promotions, and we can do that based on calendar events such as Christmas or New Year's or Easter. It could be based on marketing promotions such as TV ads or radio ads or social media or seasonal campaigns. And all of the logic behind this, as I said, is configured using Excel syntax, and we can then see the impact on our net margin based on the promotional spend. This next part now brings in the linkage to finance. So we might have our, at an aggregate level, the percentage increase for unit price adjustments by country, by channel. If we double click here and drill down, we can drill down to see the products underneath, or the same thing in this price here. We may want to double click on ballpoint pen and make adjustments. So I can do mass adjustments to numbers if I want using a feature called lock and spread. So I can highlight a number of cells and I can say I want to add a growth percentage of 2%. Click save, close. And then when I come out of here, I can recalc or apply to a particular month. So that's now recalculating my unit price. Unit cost can be edited, and this flows through to unit margin. Again, we can double click to drill down and see that lower level of detail. Finally, we link everything through to financials, and this is where the integration of these different, let's call them models or modules that we set up, can be done over time. So as I said, it could be finance first, it could be demand planning first, depending on what your priorities are. But the key to remember is that you're not having to have spreadsheets where people are sending things around your organization and then having one department, responsible for aggregating it all. We know that throughout all of that, there might be adjustments or mistakes or errors happening in these spreadsheets that don't get captured. You don't have one source of the truth, and that's where the benefits of board come in. We can then use the tool to make comments, so we can capture text, or we can capture formatted text. We can use it in conjunction with a workflow to action or to monitor and track how each of these actions are being carried out. And so we can create these types of dashboards. All of this commentary can be flowed through to reports. And then we finish off with the scenarios workflow, where in that S&OP meeting, we may say, let's lock in scenario 1. So we can type in a comment, decided to go with scenario 1 due to XYZ. I can save that. And then I can change the status of in progress to preferred. And what that will then do is lock those numbers in and update the other plans, such as the distribution plan and the production plan and the procurement plan. Right? So you can have all of this interlinked. So that was what I wanted to give you an example of today. That was just an example of how you could do demand planning. Of course, we're happy to show you further information or details or demos around the other areas, but just keep in mind that these are all examples and not necessarily what you have to end up with. Just to finish off, another key capability of this tool is the ability to send this data off to I guess, push this information out to your user base. So you've seen how we can create these dashboards. It's also possible to then add any of these dashboards to a presentation. So for example, I could add this dashboard to a Office of Finance book. So if I click on add, we see here some other pages that were already in that existing presentation. I could move this slide up to be, say, the second one, and I could put an annotation in there saying demand scenario 1 was selected for XYZ reasons. And I can then come out of there and go into presentations and run my presentation, click on play, and this now is very much like a management pack, all managed within the board platform, right? So forget having to dump data out to Excel, manipulate the data in Excel, send it to PDF, email it out to people. All of these presentations can be produced within the tool. All of them are interactive, so they're live, so they're using the latest data in the tool. There's my comment or my annotation. We can export these presentations to, say, PDF or PowerPoint, but we can also schedule the distribution of these reports, say in PowerPoint format or PDF format, to a user base. And these people don't have to be board users. If they just need a static report once a month, we can do that. And we also have Office integration, so that flexibility is always there if people want to create their own reports. We have Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. Everybody these days has an Excel add-in, but our customers do like the board add-in for Word. So this is just a normal Word document. All of these charts, these bolded values, are directly linked back to board. So say there's an update and a plan, rather than having to go through a board paper or a presentation and update every single number that may have been impacted, we simply come in here and click refresh, and that's going to pull the latest numbers into the pack. But if you were to send out this document as a Word document, anybody else can open it as it is, and all of these images or these charts just appear as images. So there's a lot of efficiencies that can be gained, not only on the planning side, but also in the way that we are able to distribute the information from the solution out to our user base. So look, that brings me to the end of the demonstration. I think at this point, I was going to hand back to Tom to read out any questions that have been asked during the session.
Thank you, Nigel. Okay, so a bit of an echo here, but you can hear me. There's just a few questions that have come up, which I'll read out. So the first question is, can you explain how connectivity with JDE works? And excuse me, I'm not technical, but from my understanding, you can use any one of the various several integration methods that JD Edwards has available, whether that's flat file, business services, using Orchestrator. There are a number of ways to do that, depending on what you need and how quickly you need the information transferred and on what basis. The next question is, how long does a project take? I guess to me, it'd be depending on, it's by company, depends on the company scenario, depending on whether a manufacturer, whether a distributor or a wholesaler type company, because you'll have different product families, product groups, different resources to support that. Typically, I don't think you'll be doing an S&OP project under 6 months to get it exactly right and tuned the way you might need it. A question, excuse me. perhaps for Chris or Nigel is, can board be reconfigured to look and feel like other internal systems? And can we configure the processes to model?
I'm happy to take that, Chris. Yeah, so look, the answer is definitely yes. I think I said it at the start of the demonstration, but what you saw today was purely an art of the possible with the tool. So if you want, you can start with a blank slate, a blank screen even, and work with the Ndevr team and Tom's team to mock up what you want your solution to look like. We can definitely create screens that look like your corporate branding, your colors, your fonts, and in terms of the look and the feel of the application, the flow, the menus that pop up, everything is configurable. But a good starting point can be something like the application you saw today, because coming up with these things from scratch can sometimes be quite daunting or quite difficult. And that's why we do provide these demonstration assets as a way to guide design workshops and things like that. But end of the day, think of the Apple iPhone and the iOS store. You can create apps to look exactly how you want, and we've pretty much got exactly that same concept.
Okay, thanks, Nigel. We don't have any more questions at this stage, just those three around connectivity, the length of a project, and also how it can be configured, look and feel. Any more questions at this stage? I don't see any more questions coming through, so it looks like that's it. I think we've our time frame today was about 45 minutes, so we're just about on that now. So just on behalf of both Chris and Nigel and myself, both from Ndevr and board, we'd like to thank you for attending today. There are certainly different things you might want to consider in that regards, but please reach out to us. I'm just seeing if I can give you the contact numbers that we can give you. So I just can't get it to share at the moment, but you can reach out to myself at Ndevr, and it's just tom.devine@ndevr.com.au. And I'm sure if you need any questions, I can relay questions to board, or if it is to Chris or Nigel, I will pass them on for you if it's a specific board question. So thank you very much for attending, and we look forward to getting your feedback and perhaps an further inquiry or a demo specific to your company. Okay, thank you everybody. Thanks for joining.